Good morning and welcome to OpenLine Online Sunday, November 10th. I call it Veterans Day weekend because Veterans Day 2019 is tomorrow. I am your host, Fatin Muhammad, and we are smaller than usual this Sunday morning.
Compact.
Very interesting show, and we have lined up for you. And just to let you know that majority of our staff, Bobby Childs was off, Jamie Harris off, Nither off, and then we had a guest that was scheduled to come in, and they hit me this morning and said that they seem that they are coming down with the flu.
Well, it's going around.
So I was wondering, and I said, we're not going to postpone the open line online. And the reason why is because there's people out there that do podcasts with one person. And one thing about our audience, if they agree with us or disagree, they participate on the show. So today, I plan to utilize a lot of your comments out there. So I look forward to that. So let me introduce our panel. This is definitely a roundtable discussion this morning. And first up is our brother protest. I call him Brother Larry Ham. Good morning, Brother Larry.
Good morning, good morning, good morning to everybody in our viewing and listening audience, and happy Veterans Day.
Exactly.
To all of our listeners, viewers, not just to our listeners and viewers, but to everybody who has served in the armed forces.
Exactly. Sitting next to Brother Larry Ham is our legal analyst, Attorney Bob Pickett. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Fatim, and good morning to all the folks out there watching us as we talk about the issues that are important to them.
Exactly. Now, there's a lot of news out there, but I want to start off with something a little different. I didn't plan it, but I throw things out there, throw the curveball. Let's talk a little bit about Veterans Day. And we, at the end of on-air open line this morning, we wish all the veterans well. But one of the things that I said that I feel that this country could do more. Can do more for veterans. I know that when you come back from or participating in the armed forces, there are certain bills that are out there, but it's too many veterans that seem to suffer. For instance, if veterans live in New York, I just think that there should be certain things that are set up for them that they don't have to scramble for housing, they have to scramble for food, and they should have to scramble for care,
Right.
especially if they have been wounded or not.
Right.
Even any type of illness, they dedicated and put their life on the line for this country.
Yes.
And I think that we could do more. And I think I want to start off with that today. And Larry, what is your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I just want to say that my father was a veteran. He's deceased now. He fought in World War II. My grandfather is a veteran, and he's, as you can see, going on. He fought in World War I. They're both buried, and I went to see them recently. They're great. I went to visit their graves recently. They're buried in the Glendale Cemetery in Belleville, New Jersey, in the Veterans section. So I feel, a certain closeness to the issue because my father and my grandfather were veterans, and we do not take care of our veterans adequately in this country. And one of the reasons why, as you stated, our veterans are having difficulty is primarily because of government policy. I mean, I've seen administration after administration over the years cut back funds to veterans hospitals, cut back funds to veterans programs, and it's just disgraceful. I mean, you can go to Penn Station, New York, you can go to almost any Penn Station in the country, and you will see the homeless at Penn Station in our transportation centers. And many of those homeless are veterans. We have veterans now. I think the most recent war would be the war in Iraq.
Correct.
And we have homeless veterans that fought in Iraq. It's a disgrace in a country like this. And I want to commend those members of the armed forces who have spoken out on this and other issues. There are groups like Veterans for Peace and Black Veterans for Peace. There are a wide range of veterans groups that have not only spoken to the condition of our veterans, but who have also opposed these unjust wars and wars for regime change. And I say that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength to do that. You know, the veterans who were against the Vietnam War and so on and so forth. So I commend those veterans. I urge them to continue to keep veterans in the movement for social justice.
Bob?
I agree. I think it's critically important for us to support our veterans. They supported us in taking on the challenge of various wars over the last 50 or 60 years, and we need to do more. I've had a number of experiences with the Veterans Administration, and the way they treat veterans traditionally has been very harsh and one-handed and not supportive, smack in the face, go away, come back later. So I concur with Larry that we need to do more. We need to get involved in helping them continue to live a good life in America.
And I agree with both of you on your thoughts on veterans. I want to say, for me, my uncle that I'm named after, he fought in World War II, and he was in Pearl Harbor when it got bombed.
Wow.
You know, and I feel bad because he passed when I was fairly young, so I didn't get a chance to really dive in and find out some more things. You know, when you're around with your family members and you hear of these stories. And he talked about it, and he talked proud. And my uncle was a big, strong, had that roaring voice, you know. And he talked about how he survived with his other mates in Pearl Harbor and to go on to win.
He was in the Navy.
Yes. So kudos to our name is Ernest Stroman, Uncle Ernest Stroman. I have to put that respect. That's how it goes in my family. Also, I have a cousin who's still in the armed forces. And you talk about the Iraq War. He's there. He lives in Milwaukee. Ronald Adams. And I have other younger members that are in the armed forces now. That it's not just male. It's females now that are joining the armed forces now. And I just want to uplift them. And one of the things, and I know at times President Obama gets heat, but I give President Obama kudos that he honors veterans. He honored Black veterans, the Tuskegee Airmen, to fly missions and not to lose one person, one pilot. That's phenomenal.
Right. The story of African Americans in the military is still one that goes largely untold. I mean, we've had some bright spots like Red Tails and documentaries on the Tuskegee Airmen. The Tuskegee Airmen have gotten some attention, but this is a story that still must be told. And I hope maybe that one day we can do a show and bring veterans in.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Bring veterans in from all branches of the armed service and let them talk, because while we commend and recognize all the service that they have done, putting their lives on the line and so on and so forth, there are problems in the military. There's a lot of racism in the military. There's a lot of sexism in the military.
That's correct.
You know, just the last year or so, issues have come forward where women have been raped in the military and were not given their proper day in court or in the military courts and did not have just outcomes.
Correct.
All of these issues need to be discussed and aired out. You know, just like in the corporate world, we find ceilings, we find racial ceiling, glass ceilings against race, against women. You have it in the military too. And just like people talk about how it's last hired, first fired, it's difficult in the military for African Americans, other people of color, and women to be promoted and get higher ranks and so on and so forth. That's why when there's a black general that's made, there's so much attention to it because, it's so unusual. So there are issues in the military: institutional racism, institutional sexism, homophobia, and so on and so forth. These issues need to be aired out.
Right, I agree with that. I'm looking over some of the comments here this morning and trying to see if there's anything on the military. And just give us a chat if you want to. Yes, Cynthia Shields says, Happy Veterans Day to all veterans from a fellow Navy veteran. There should never be a time when a veteran is in need of anything. That comes from Lynn E. So you see... folks have comments. Chestnut Street states that the VA is part of the problem, but the politicians are the biggest issue, sending these men and women overseas to be foddered, then patched up and returned here with zero support. And that's what we're talking about this morning.
Exactly. Right.
And Pat Johnson goes on to say most veterans hate going to the hospital, but the VA hospitals, but when you don't have anywhere else to go, there's no alternative to the VA hospital. So a lot said there. Black Thought veterans whistleblowers are frowned down upon. And that's interesting, and I know we may have a lot of younger viewers out there, but I remember still as a kid, where you had a lot of veterans that came back from the Vietnam War.
Yes.
And one of the biggest things that the veterans were fighting and voicing their voice out there was on Agent Orange, about chemicals that was used in the war against the Vietnamese, and the United States said that they did not use this, and so many of our soldiers became sick. Some died from this, and the cover-up that America did to their own.
Yes, and there have been several cover-ups. Of course, the lethal catalyst in Agent Orange is dioxin, and we used it against the Vietnamese as a defoliant.
Yes.
Because in Vietnam, it was a jungle war. So the thinking was, the wrong-headed thinking of our military was that we could defeat the Vietnamese if we just burned down the jungles, So we would use that napalm and use that and Agent Orange and other things, and not understanding that we couldn't poison the Vietnamese people without poisoning our own soldiers. And that's what happened, because now in Vietnam, these dangerous chemical substance that were used in the Agent Orange and the napalm and the other things, they affect people genetically. And to this day, and probably for generations to come, many Vietnamese children are born with genetic defects because of these things. But what's the flip side? The flip side is that these same poisons got into the systems of our soldiers and poisoned them, and many of them have had children with birth defects. And this repeated itself in Iraq, because in Iraq we used bombs that had casing made out of depleted uranium. So we're dropping these depleted uranium bombs on people in Iraq, but at the same time, our soldiers are sitting in tanks and sitting in planes, sitting on top of those radioactive payloads and themselves being affected. So there have been cover-ups over the years in the military. A scandal right now has been the use of white phosphorus. We use white phosphorus in the war in Iraq. They're using it in Syria. Now, there were just recent articles on white phosphorus. It burns you from the inside out.
Yes.
War is hell.
Yes.
And these wars, the Vietnam War was so awful Dr. King had to speak out about it. And these other wars that we have had, that's why I give kudos to like people like Michael McPherson and other people from Veterans for Peace, Vietnam Veterans Against the War, the Black veterans groups. You know, it's funny because another dimension of this is the fact that the military also helped to radicalize black people. A lot of blacks that came back from World War I and World War II. After fighting abroad, they said, we're not putting up with this racist Jim Crow.
Yeah, that's right.
And we had situations where black soldiers were lynched in their uniforms.
Yes.
You know, here in this country, and not just one or two.
No.
They made it a point to lynch them in their uniforms.
Was it teach them a lesson?
That's right. Teach them a lesson that you're still not equal. But that radicalized them. You know, a lot of brothers that came back from Vietnam, they got in the movement. Some of them joined the Black Panther Party.
That's right.
Because they said, well, I'm not going to learn all these military skills over there and not apply them in my struggle over here.
Yeah.
So it's something to think about.
Yeah, I just want to say this to you both, and I throw the word reparations out there. You probably say, and the folks out there, where's Fatine going with reparations? Well, let's talk about this for a minute. You look back at some of these world wars, and let's go back to World War II, where the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima, however you want to pronounce it, and Nagasaki.
Right.
We dropped 2 atomic bombs there. We threatened a 3rd bomb, which we didn't have. And of course, we won that war. As time went on, because of us dropping the bomb, and we're in war against Japan.
Right.
The United States paid or still may be paying reparations to Japan before dropping the bomb. Fast forward, well, let's talk about it. Well, our ancestors were veterans of slavery here in the United States. The ills that this country did onto people of color. We were promised 40 acres and a mule. We got nothing but promises. And then people get uncomfortable when our folks bring up reparations every time there's an opportunity to bring up reparations.
Right.
I'm right with our folks on that when it comes down to reparations. And this here ties into that.
Right. Well, it was the Civil War that triggered the actual moves that were initially made toward reparations. Black people have been demanding reparations almost from the beginning. When we were still in slavery, free blacks were demanding reparations for the enslavement. And even Lincoln, who Lerone Bennett correctly identified as a white supremacist, read Lerone Bennett's book on Abraham Lincoln, even Lincoln understood after they tried to, various schemes of expatriation, send us back to Africa, send us to the Caribbean, said finally we're going to have to make a place in the United States.
Right.
So it was during the Civil War that General Sherman issued General Order Number 15. This is why the South has such hatred for Sherman. They probably have more hatred for Sherman than they do for Lincoln, because Sherman took the slave master's land and literally through a military order, the signature of a pen, he expropriated 400,000 acres of slave master's land. That is, he took the land from the slave masters and gave it to the enslaved people or newly freed people, because if you didn't have land, you didn't have a stake at that time, because the country was primarily an agrarian country. On the basis of General Order Number 15, Thaddeus Stevens in Congress introduces H.R. 29, the reparations bill, which said that every free person, every person that actually, I think it was, that fought in the Civil War, or their survivors, their family that survived, would receive 40 acres and $50. No, not a mule, and $50. The mule comes from the fact that if you had land, if you didn't have a ox or a mule to draw the plow, to pull the plow, you couldn't do nothing with the land. So Sherman after he expropriated the land from the slave masters, the mules that would pull cannons, he gave those mules or some of those mules to the people to whom he had given land. That's where the mule comes from. But the actual bill, H.R. 29, said 40 acres and $50. It was passed by the House of Representatives.
Yes.
A version of it was passed by the Senate, but it was vetoed by Andrew Johnson, who was Lincoln's vice president,
That's correct.
who became president after Lincoln was assassinated. Johnson was a Southern sympathizer.
Yes, he was.
He was from Tennessee, and he undid everything that Sherman and the others had done. He vetoed the reparations bill, and then he issued executive orders saying that the land that had been given had to be returned to the slave
So we could
masters.
change. So if we change those names now and put President Obama and then Trump, something similar, isn't it similar? When I use the word in a sense of the things that President Obama and his administration implemented, here comes another president, comes out and tries to undo everything that he's done. And you know what? This is, and of course, we that are savvy politically know this.
Right.
But I was watching I think AM Joy on one of the older shows, and Omarosa was speaking, and you know, a lot of times, and Omarosa did a lot to cause people to have a negative opinion to her. But after she has left the White House and the things that she has documented and talked about, how President Trump, when she was in the White House, there was a list of things that President Obama did and implemented that President Trump was going to do any and everything to discard that. You know, so it's that's why people need to know their history. So you understand what I'm saying? I just want to, and I said that you folks out there are going to be part of our show today. I just want to, and I thank you all for the comments. I can't read them all, but I'm going to do my best to get to a lot today. Fancy Style Incorporated says, we also do not put any money into shelters for people living with disability. That is part of the problem. If you have disability, you're forced to check into the hospital or stay on the streets. You go also look at the mental hospitals. The funding has been cut to the point that mental institutions have been closed, and the folks that go in the hospital, they can't stay there but so long, and they're back on the street. I also want to thank Fancy Style. Thank you for advocating for our program. I appreciate that, Fancy Style, for doing that. Let's go on to Edward Lassens. While they're serving their house, but once they're no longer serving, their homes are gone. They need housing post-military at least for 5 years. So you see so many people out here agree that more should be done for the veterans. Some folks have thanked you, Larry, for the history lesson this morning. Pat Johnson, Dred Scott just wanted his freedom, and they said no to that, so I don't think they will ever agree to reparations.
Well, I want to say this, that first of all, state my unequivocal support for reparations for African Americans. But it has come up during these presidential debates, and I think that politically speaking, it has opened a door for the discussion, and that we need to keep the discussion going. And all of these candidates, now some of the Democratic candidates have said they are for reparations. So my challenge to them is, if they are in fact for reparations, then that needs to be included in the Democratic Party platform at the convention when the presidential candidate is going to be chosen next July. After we go through the primary season, there's going to be a convention. That's when we'll find out who the party's nominee for president is going to be. But that's also where they put together the platform
and policies
on which the presidential nominee will run. Reparations has never been in the Democratic Party platform. So in order to keep this push going, we should demand that all of those people who are running for president that said they are for reparations, they need to include it in the Democratic Party platform.
That would be a very, very powerful statement to send to us And I think a majority of the African American population would welcome that kind of approach.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get to some of the other stories out here in the news, and let's go into former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg, who filed papers this past Friday to enter the Alabama primary. And it's very interesting that there's a poll that came out over the weekend, and it's a new Morning Consult political poll, and it says that 43% of likely voters would back Michael Bloomberg if the election was held today, compared to 37% who would vote for Trump. 21% of those polled, however, said they don't know or don't have an opinion there. Bloomberg, however, might struggle to get ahead in the primary. He is currently in sixth place with just 4% of Democratic primary voters backing him. That's interesting, 4%. There's some of those candidates that are just polling at 1% and 2%. So Bloomberg just entered the race, and he's not even going to be in the next
Primary.
no, not the primary. The next debate. No, he's not going to be in the next debate, and he's already polling at 4%. So that becomes interesting. But as we opened up the phones this morning, and it was, I might say, 70-30 or 60-40, somewhere in that range, where
More like 80-20.
you think it was more 80-20?
I heard the show.
But that said that they feel that Michael Bloomberg should not enter the race. They were not happy with how he ran New York for 3 years. I put out my opinion that there were things that I disagreed with Michael Bloomberg, but there were things that when he was the mayor, when Michael Bloomberg was mayor, that he did that I did not see in other mayors. I didn't see, of course, we didn't see it in Julian. I didn't see some of the things he did. I didn't even see Mayor Dakin speak on some of those things as forceful as Michael Bloomberg, especially when it came down, again, he was terrible with stop and frisk. But one thing I noticed, he didn't cover up when there was a bad shoot. At least, in, like I said, in the Timothy Stansbury situation. And Bob, I'll come back and get your opinion, because you shared it this morning, but I want to start off with Larry, your opinion about Michael Bloomberg entering this race. Of course, I know who you're supporting right now,
Right.
But I think Michael Bloomberg is jumping in this race because Joe Biden is slipping.
Right. In the interest of full disclosure, I am supporting Bernie Sanders. However, former Mayor Bloomberg needs to sit down. I think this is a very dangerous thing that he's doing. I think it's indicative of the fact that the billionaire, millionaire class is very disturbed by this leftward shift in the Democratic Party. And I think, quite frankly, this is my opinion. I know other people may not share this opinion. This is my opinion, one man's opinion, that he's jumping in the race because the political thrust from Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren is so sharp that now they feel that their spokespeople, the politicians who are running, carrying their water, are not doing a good enough job, and that they have to get in this directly, because people are talking about the greatest inequality on the face of the earth right now is right here in the United States. Literally a handful of people, and I'm not even talking about 1%. 1% would be like 100,000 people. I'm talking about 3, 10, 25 families control most of the wealth in the country. The inequality, the wealth inequality in the United States right now is greater than the wealth inequality in China, where they have 1 billion people. So I think Bloomberg is reflective of his class, that he's getting in the race to protect his class interests. And it's really interesting because he's not going to hurt Warren. He's not going to hurt Sanders. He's going to hurt Joe Biden. if he gets in the race. That's who he's going to, because the people who are supporting Warren and Sanders are hardcore committed to those candidates. He's going to draw from Joe Biden. I think the other thing is, I'm going to let Bob get in here, is I think that there's a kind of odor in the air that the Democrats may be headed toward a brokered convention, that Joe Biden is not doing what they thought he's going to do. You know, he came in with like a 39%. Now he's down to 22%, I think, in the national polls. And it looks like a three-way race right now between Sanders, Warren, and Biden. And if that holds through the Democratic convention and none of them come in with a majority of the delegates, you could have a situation where at the convention, it might be decided that we're not going to deal with either Sanders, Warren, or Biden. We're going to pick somebody else. And I think that Bloomberg is looking at that and thinking that he could possibly be the brokered candidate at the convention.
Bob?
Well, I think, and I'm very firm about this, that Michael Bloomfield, Bloomberg offers an opportunity to compete with Trump. To me, Trump is probably one of the most dangerous candidates that we ever had.
We got that part. How are you jumping over the other Democratic candidates first? We've got to deal with that first, Bob.
Yeah.
How are we jumping over them? Let's talk about that first. You got, as Larry mentioned, a three-way race. I'm looking at possibly maybe a four-way race. We have to see how Buttigieg does, because he is rising up in the polls right now. So I'll stick with what Larry said, three or four-way race.
Well,
what about him getting in this late? How do you think he can make a dent? Do you think he can win the primary?
Yes, I think Bloomberg will be a powerful force, not only
but
because
how does he win?
But not only because he could articulate the issues, but because he has the money to engage Trump. Trump has a lot of money. He's going to throw a lot of money into the campaign, and we need a candidate who can equalize that kind of funding. And I think he's a very viable candidate. Long before he became a Republican, he was a viable Democrat, and I met him on occasions, and he's a fair and equitable human being who has a lot of good concerns about the African American community.
Oh, so if he had good concerns, then why didn't he deal with stop and frisk?
Well, that was about a matter of politics at that point in time.
Not about politics; it was policy.
Well, it's a matter of politics as well.
It's policy, Bob.
Plus, he didn't have a lot of people pushing him on the issue. I think he will be a very viable candidate. He will have the money. There'll be no issue or address about money. He will have, as a billionaire, and I think, Larry, check me if I'm wrong here, but we're looking at a gentleman who has $4 to $5 billion, in his trust, and that will compete nicely with Trump. Trump is, to me, Fatim, Trump is dangerous.
But we know that.
Trump is dangerous.
But we know that. But the point is that Bloomberg should have got in this race earlier. He should have got in this race earlier, and for him to come in this race, now, if he can come in and move up the ladder and win the Democratic nomination, then I'll support him. But the bottom line is, I'm not going to just elevate him over everybody. And no, this country going to elevate him. You heard the callers this morning. Not the callers here in New York. The majority of the callers are here. So they're not going to just elevate him and put him in Trump because he's a billionaire. He has to deal with those candidates that have been out there day in, day out, talking to the voters out there on the ground. We cannot elevate him before we deal with the other candidates.
I understand, and your involvement in politics may be.
Now, don't go there, because we're not going. Don't go there.
No.
Don't go there.
Let me just finish.
I will shut that down right now.
May
Right
be
now.
limited. Okay.
Now, Bob, stop it.
No. No,
Stop
I'm,
it.
no.
So answer the question. How does
I'm just suggesting.
how does
I'm just
Bloomberg
suggesting.
come in and go? How do you elevate him over the other candidates? Deal with that, not Trump. Deal with Bernie
Okay,
Sanders,
okay.
Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren.
I
Let's deal
elevate
with it
him
there.
on his ability to take on Trump money-wise, okay, and that's critical.
go ahead.
And it may very well be.
You're very limited on that.
No.
If you want to talk about limits, you're talking about limit. You're very limited on that because you're not answering the question. The question is not about Trump. It's about the top three candidates in the Democratic that are running for president right now. How do you elevate Michael Bloomberg over them?
I've been very clear. I'm elevating all of them. I'm elevating Michael Bloomberg because he has the necessary funding to take on Donald Trump.
But money is
Let
not
me
enough.
finish.
Okay.
Head to head. Trump has a lot of money, and he's going to throw a lot of money into the campaign. We need a candidate who has the money and who has the charisma to take Trump on. Trump is a very dangerous candidate.
Go ahead.
Right.
Larry.
If Michael,
Am I wrong about that, Larry? He's dangerous.
I absolutely
We both agree
agree
with that part,
We-
but-
I think we all in this room agree
with
that
that
Trump
part.
is dangerous. But the question is, how do we get Trump out? I would predict that if Michael Bloomberg becomes the Democratic Party nominee, the Democrats will lose the election in November of 2020. They will go down in flames. The people don't want to change. Although you're right, Bloomberg has more money than Trump. The people of this country are sick and tired of the millionaire, billionaire class. They're tired of them. The irony is that Trump is a millionaire and he ran on a populist platform, really attacking his own class in some respects. That's the irony of it. People are sick and tired. They see the game is rigged.
Right.
The benefit, this has been the greatest upward redistribution, not downward distribution
I
of
agree.
wealth.
I agree.
The greatest upward redistribution
I
of
agree,
wealth
but my
in
point-
history.
but my
and
point-
if
but-
the
but my-
Democrats choose
Right.
Michael Bloomberg as the nominee at the convention in 2020, they will lose.
Let me just go ahead and-
Trump will be reelected.
I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, but all right.
I think that Michael Bloomberg will pose a really excellent opponent to Trump, especially being able to pull out the dough to go head to head with him. Trump is going to throw all of his money into this campaign. He's had an ego for the last 15 years that he would be the president of the United States. We must defeat that idea that he could be the president, and the only way to defeat that idea is to money up equally with his money.
Okay,
and,
got it. I got it.
Take him out.
I got it. All right, so let's read some of these comments here. Diane Stephen, Bloomberg won't carry many states. Charles C.A., money won't win this election in 2020. If our meager media won't discuss the real issues, Trump wins because his people will turn out in droves. Musa Ahmed, Bloomberg is anti-poor or anyone not a billionaire. Mr. Johnson said Larry loves Bernie, period. Fancy Style says, in this topic, this is a new day, and politics, money in the coffers does not guarantee a win. It has been proven that ground support and small dollar donations are making the biggest difference in American politics, and President Obama proved that right there. Diane Stephen, I agree with Larry. Nuke, no one outside of New York likes Bloomberg. America is Kemet. I hate liberals. Anthony Long, Michael Bloomberg told the labor unions that they should do more with less. I will not forget this. So at the end of the day, people are not feeling Michael Bloomberg so far, not even in his home state here.
And don't forget what's going to happen over the next 6 months. Bloomberg is not going to run as an independent. He's running as a Democrat.
Correct.
He's registering for the Alabama primary, which is not until March, I think. But the point is, what happens over the next 8 months, 7, 8 months, it's the primary, it's the competition within the Democratic Party. So Bloomberg is not just going to be attacking Trump. He's going to be attacking other Democrats.
Of course, that's why I try to get out to Bob, but Bob is not answering that question.
That's right. He's going to attack other Democrats, and he's going to hurt the Democrats' effort to defeat Trump in November.
I don't know now. I don't know about that part, but I do know that one of the reasons I think, and from what has been said, is that you made a reference of it in a sense of the progressive side, how they are moving, and I think that Bloomberg and his supporters have their opinion about that, and I agree with you on that. Right. But on this side, and I kind of agree with this, that Joe Biden is slipping. Yes. He's slipping in the polls. He's not handling very well in these debates, and we can sit up here and fool ourselves. Oh, he did pretty good. Oh, he didn't get knocked out, so he did pretty well. Stop playing games with that, Joe Biden. But
Joe Biden is ill.
But one thing about Joe Biden is that right now, for whatever the reason is, he has a large support from the African American community, and I don't know if Bloomberg, because on the issues that some of the issues that Joe Biden raised, Michael Bloomberg raised those same issues, but I don't know if Michael Bloomberg can get the African American support as Joe Biden is getting, and now Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders is starting to rise with African American support.
Trust me, Fatim, he can get that kind of support.
How does that happen, Bob?
For a couple of reasons. By working with established African-American leaders, and providing the necessary funding to take on Trump. Again, I keep saying this, Trump is very dangerous. If we make him the president, we're going to all be in jeopardy because his ego is so massive that he never understands when he's wrong.
But we got that. That's not.
He never understands when he's wrong.
That's not the point we're making. The point that we're trying to make is having the strongest candidate that will represent the Democratic Party to go against Trump. And Michael Bloomberg may not be it. It's Joe Biden. We don't know. We got to have to wait till these primaries start to see where this country and who they get behind. And that's what's going to tell. And if Michael Bloomberg gets in, and he's in now, and he doesn't do well, he knows one thing about Michael Bloomberg. It doesn't matter about numbers. Money. If the numbers don't match, he cannot win.
Right.
All right. So I think we're going to close that on that. But we're going to still stick with African Americans, stay on the topic of African Americans. This past Friday, President Donald Trump was in Atlanta, Georgia, to kick off his new initiative. And that initiative is called Black Voices for Trump. Very interesting. Maybe about 300 people came out to this rally. There's some curiosity among some black folks. I think that was about 6% of African Americans, people of color that voted for Trump. He may get a little bit more in this election, but he will not get a groundswell because of the disrespect and how he's treated the African-American community. That's one thing. We're not stupid. Right. You understand? But one of the things, and I said this from, and Reverend Sharpton said this yesterday on his Politic Nation show, is that the Democrat Party must do more for the African-American voters, because you can't just continue to talk to the African-American community only during the election and just throw a few promises. You mentioned just about reparations. Make a commitment. Right. And even you listeners out there have said that. Make a commitment. And I even agree with you now. If you're going to make it a commitment, make it part of the party's platform now. If you're going to say that you're behind reparation, get behind it. Black folks now, we have to stand up and be counted, but we have to be treated with respect to be counted. And if you're not going to do that, then black folks are not going to get behind you. And then at the end of the day, you know what, Pickett? 4 more years of Trump.
That's scary.
God forbid.
But what are your thoughts about him courting African Americans now?
I think that it's so eminently clear that Trump is probably the most openly racist, because there were presidents that did not express their
Silently.
their personal racist views, but he's the most openly contemporary racist president we've had, that now they feel it is necessary to have a outreach strategy to the African American community to try to prove that the Republicans are not racist, when in fact they are right now the party of Trump and the party of white nationalism and the party of white supremacy. And yes, there is racism and white supremacy in both parties, but clearly the Trump regime represents something that is beyond the pale of what we have experienced. He's even worse than Nixon. I mean, this is a guy who's made open alliance with the most extreme racist elements in American society. Trump was endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan. Trump has had in his cabinet people who are neo-Nazis, or who travel with neo-Nazis and who rally with neo-Nazis. Trump himself refused to condemn
Or reject.
Right, no, refused to condemn in the harshest terms the attacks that these racists and neo-Nazis and Confederates and neo-Confederates have made, these violent attacks on black people, other people of color, women, Jews. You know, people are marching into synagogues, mosques, and churches and killing people. So the pushback against Trump on his racism has been so great that they feel that they have to publicly have some kind of African American outreach to put some kind of diverse face on really what is the face of white nationalism, white supremacy, and white racism in America. And, you know, people should look at history. There have always been black people that supported these white racist leaders. I mean, remember, after emancipation, there were some blacks that wouldn't leave the plantation. There was some that left and returned to the plantation. There was some, you know, that supported the most racist leaders. You know, there were always blacks well, at that time it was switched. The Democratic Party, you know, was the party of the Klan back in the 19th century, you know. So Nixon had black people that supported him. Reagan had black people that supported him. George Bush had black people, Bush father and son, black people that supported him. So it's not surprising that they're able to find some black people, you know, that will support Trump.
Yeah, that's interesting. DB4A states Joe Biden is not charismatic, but we know and mostly trust him. He is the only person with prior experience. Others will need to learn the job. However, after Trump, U.S. needs someone with credibility on day one. Black Thought says Trump looks like he belongs on a $6 bill, right along with all those other slaveholders on the currency. Fancy Style said Trump was not the first president to be endorsed by the KKK. Unfortunately, he won't be the last political candidate endorsed by the KKK. There was another thought that she had mentioned about showing up and listening to that. I can't find that comment. Oh, as a conservative, I have to admit that I am still willing to listen to what the administration may have to offer. There's no point in not showing up for the discussion. Very interesting, very interesting. And
you know what's interesting to me, though, is that Trump is so obnoxious. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's and this I agree with Bob on how awful Trump is.
Correct.
Trump is so obnoxious that even conservatives within the Republican Party, like George Will is a notoriously conservative commentator.
Yep.
But Will recently came out with an editorial that said not only should Trump be defeated, but any other elected Republican that supports Trump should be defeated. So we're dealing with something here that is beyond the pale of the conventional kind of racism. Trump represents, it's like, you know, with folks on the left, we say, well, Trump is not the cause, he's the symptom. Right. I agree with that. But if you play sports, you know, like if you play football, you got to do what? Take out the quarterback.
Got to take the quarterback out.
You got to take the quarterback. You got to take the quarterback out.
Right.
You know, you can't. Well, yes, we must win the game, but to win the game, we got to take out the quarterback.
That's
and
right.
Trump right now, he is the flag. It's like anybody that says king of the mountain. You got to get the flag.
That's right.
He is the flag of the Republican Party. We have to defeat him and then continue our work to change the system.
Well, you talk about taking him out. Well, he's up of possibly being impeached, at least by the House here. And, of course, this week coming up, the hearings, these impeachment inquiry that's moving forward now is that now they're going to be public. It's going to be public now so folks can hear on both sides what's taking place. This past week, there was some damning testimony dealing with the release of the transcripts. They were released by the House to the public, and there was some interesting things that came out on this, and it just looks like the Republicans and Donald Trump is trying to go after the whistleblower, trying to discredit the whistleblower, threatening to name the whistleblower. This is very dangerous, and of course, like I said, Bob is not wrong about that. We already know that part. We all are in sync on that part of President Trump. But the Democrats seem to be focused in the sense of the direction they are going, that Trump has done something wrong, and that they feel that he should be impeached.
Right.
And he will be.
Use your mic. Use your mic.
Yeah. And he will be impeached.
How? Why? Why do you think that the Democrats have enough?
I think if the Democrats stay focused and they deal with the issues as we know them, he will be impeached. He doesn't deserve to be a presidential nominee, nor does he deserve to be the president of the United States. He's absolutely horrible.
All right, so let's talk about that. So let's look at this. The testimony that now was released, it has been consistent and largely damaging. The witnesses whose transcripts were released: Bill Taylor, George Kent, Fiona Hill, Alexander Vidman, Maria Jovanovic, and Michael McKinley all testified that President Donald Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, was circumventing normal diplomatic channels to pressure Ukraine into launching political investigations that would be beneficial to President Trump. The witnesses also all expressed alarm that military aid to Ukraine had been withheld and that the funds appeared to be at the center of the quid pro quo, money for investigations.
Right.
Larry.
You know, Trump, this whole episode just really underscores the hypocrisy of the Republican Party. Right now, it's a cult. It's not a party. And when I say it's a cult, because primarily it's under the sway of this one person who, in their eyes, can do no wrong. I agree, Trump will be impeached. The House of Representatives will introduce articles of impeachment, and they will pass those articles, and he will be impeached forever in history. The question is, what will happen to the Senate? Because impeachment is just the first half of the process. The second half of the process is the trial that has to be held in the Senate.
Correct.
And the question is, will there be any Republican, and I ask this seriously, will there be any Republicans strong enough to resist the cult followers of Trump.
That's correct.
And vote for the articles of impeachment, vote to find him guilty. And then it's not even done then, because you can find a president guilty and not remove him from office.
Right.
And that could be kind of way this thing might go. The evidence might be so overwhelming that they will say, okay, well, it'll be criminal. We'll look like criminals if we don't vote for impeachment. But okay, we're going to find him guilty of the minor charge, but we're not going to remove him. And I think that is a possible scenario. But most people's money, all the betting people right now, saying yes, the House will impeach him, but there will not be enough votes in the Senate. Now, there are some commentators. I've been following this in the news. There are some commentators who think that the popular opinion could change so much over the next 2 or 3 months. Because right now, it's about 50% of people say Trump should be impeached. If it goes up 55, 60, there might be some Republicans who'll say, well, it might not be in my best interest, to vote for this criminal, to vote against finding the criminal guilty or whatever. And they may, in fact, vote to find him guilty, and, we'll see what happens after that.
Now, let me ask you this. A good friend of ours, family member, we call him, Walter Fields, he put out there on Facebook this latter part of the week that the Democrats strategically should have, instead of going for the impeachment, they should have went to censor the president. It's too late, and I didn't even say it's too late. I just think that that's a slap on the wrist. I think that now coming out with this call, the Republicans don't tiptoe. Why do the Democrats have to tiptoe? If the president has broke the law, and we have this, and the evidence is damaging and overwhelming, pointing that, listen, what you guys done is reckless and involving another country in our election, you supposed to be impeached, not a slap on the wrist of their censoring. And that's what I was saying to Walter. Again, he's not here to defend himself, so I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to sit there and say he's wrong. I just brought up his opinion. But my opinion is that I just think, not even though it's too late, I just think that this was the smoking gun. Yes, Mueller, and even Mueller says that it's up to the House now to move forward. Now the House can go back now into the Mueller report because it was just approved legally now that they have to get the redacted version of the unredacted version of
unredacted.
Yes, the unredacted version of the Mueller report. So we don't know if the House is going to bring more, and I believe they will.
I think so.
I think so. So I think that Trump, this is going to be interesting.
I think that they will go back and go to volume 2 of the Mueller report on the obstruction of justice. I would bet money that when they do the articles of impeachment, that Trump's attempt to block the Russia investigation,
interfere,
fire Comey, etc., I think that may come back into the articles of impeachment along with, of course, what they're dealing with now, the Ukraine situation. But I think it's just an absolute travesty. Did you see how the vote went down? That just the vote on the inquiry, not one Republican, not one Republican voted just to inquire, just to do an inquiry. They stuck together. 2 Democrats defected, one of whom was from New Jersey, 2 Democrats, but the 99% of the Democrats stuck together. But it just goes to show you what a grip that the Trumpist faction of the Republicans have on the Republican Party. And that same grip that they have in the House, they have that same grip, I believe, in the Senate.
And it's so ironic you say that.
I like your reference. Trumpist.
I was thinking about this last week, and I was saying about this whole thing with the Republicans sticking together. And now I see strategically, I see why they didn't. And the reason why, because at the end of the day, if they would have leaned to their side, I think that they're waiting for more damning evidence. And I think by sticking with the Republicans now, they leave it up to the Democrats, the House, to prove their case. If they prove their case, and then without a shadow of a doubt, and these Republicans stick there, it just shows the split with this country.
And it shows what a criminal organization.
And then we're going to have to do what we have to do as a people out here. And those people that don't like the certain candidate out there, but you know that. And I know it's hard to sell this because it's hard. You hate to say you have to sell this to our folks out here, that you take the lesser two evils. But we already know what we're getting with Trump.
Right.
And I think, pretty much majority of the Democratic candidates would be much better than President Trump.
Oh, no doubt.
Right.
No question about it.
The vote shows what a criminal organization the Republican Party is. That they will support any level of criminality, any level of depravity, depravity. I mean, here's a man that has 20-some-odd lawsuits of sexual harassment and assault against him. And yet, do you think that they would have permitted Obama to go this far?
No.
He wouldn't have got 6 months in office before he would have been impeached, found guilty, and removed. So it's a criminal organization. They have a criminal at the head of it, and they're willing to go down. And this goes to show you the politics part of politics. It's not only because they're waiting to see more evidence. These suckers are scared to lose their seat. They know that their constituencies are infected with the same racism that he exhibits. And if they go against him, their people will vote against them. They will run people against them in Republican primaries and remove them from office.
That's right. We got to become more strategic out here. That's why I say we have to become more politically savvy. We got to start educating the young. You cannot sit out here and preach this, Trump is this and that. You got to start to educate the young, because if you don't, and I'll be honest with you, when educating the young, educate them on the process, because at the end of the day, I want the young folks to grow up and think for themselves. Because a lot of times, us as elders, they may not want to move in that direction. They may think that we're pacifists. At the end of the day, they may want to come with a stronger message. I don't know.
But the key point that we have to teach our children as they grow up in this political atmosphere is to always connect the dots, okay? And the dots need to be connected. And I think we've done a wonderful job this morning in connecting the dots for our audience. And so they clearly understand that Trump is very, very dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot allow him to become a second-term president.
Got you. All right. Now, this is interesting this week. We talk about the squad. And, the squad is Representative Ayanna Pressley. You have Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You have Representative Rashida Tlaib. And who am I missing? Omar. That's right. Representative Ilhan Omar. So now, majority of them have backed for president, Democratic candidate.
Three of the four.
Three of the four have backed Bernie Sanders. And this week, Representative Presley came out and endorsed Senator Elizabeth Warren for president.
Right.
And she broke away from the squad. Right. She basically feels that Warren will make, her views is that would make a great president. She feels that Warren is starting to break ground with the African-American community, getting more ground support now. Your thoughts, even though I know you're a Bernie supporter, but overall taking a look at this, what are your thoughts, especially with the squad pretty much moving together as that progressive wing?
Right.
And both candidates, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, are labeled as progressives.
Right.
What's your thoughts on that?
About 3 weeks or maybe a month ago, we were discussing the in the POP meeting, People's Organization for Progress meeting. We were discussing the presidential campaign, and that's when AOC first came out and endorsed Bernie Sanders, and someone in the group said, and the rest of the squad was going to do so also, and I said no. I said at that time that Presley would probably endorse Warren. I'm just stating the obvious here. They both from Massachusetts.
Right.
They both come out of the Democratic Party of Massachusetts. And people have to understand that there's a state-by-state organization of the Democratic Party. You know, every state has their state organization and so on and so forth. And it's like a team. It's just like sports.
Right.
You know, you tend to support, you know, your team members. So they all Democrats. So I imagine most of the Massachusetts Democratic Party are probably going to support Warren, you know, in her state. She's out of Massachusetts. Presley's out of Massachusetts. I said at that time. So I'm not surprised, you know, by that.
This is interesting. I just had a thought just now. You know that the candidate's been out there campaigning, you know, over 8 to 12 a year, and my question is, I'm starting to see this process. I wonder if these candidates need to start raising that. I think raising the money makes sense.
Right.
But my question, where I'm going is, are they starting too early, or does it make a difference? Because it already seems that some folks already have their preconceived notion that this is who I'm voting for, and it seems like it doesn't start to heat up till we get closer to the primaries. And now you're starting to see people add in late. There's talk about Arnie Duncan joining the fray of the Democratic candidates out there. Right. Do you see this possibly changing going forward? Because people are running out of money campaigning so early that does it make sense to start that early, hold their money, and as you get closer to the primaries, then start really hitting the ground?
Well, you are right that this thing will heat up next year.
Yes.
It's kind of, there was kind of some heat in the beginning, like around the first couple of debates, but since then you could kind of see the heat going down.
Right.
But the heat, the real contest is going to start after Iowa. From Iowa forward, you know, you're going to see a lot more interest, a lot more discussion, and so on and so forth. And yes, you're right. The people who were not the strongest financially, some of them have run out of money, right. Or even if they're not totally run out, they're seeing that their contributions are dwindling, and they know that they're not going to make it.
Right.
So only the strongest financially, you know, it's like a long distance race. It's like a marathon. Only the strongest will survive and will last the entire way. So, you know, I think that we will see more heat after Iowa, and I think Iowa is in February.
No question.
And you know, I had mentioned this thing about Presley and Warren, but at the same time, I want to say just how courageous the other three are: Ilhan Omar, Representative Tlaib, and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. They are in states where their states' organizations are not supporting Bernie Sanders. They're all supporting Bernie Sanders. So you got to have a lot of chutzpah,
right,
and a lot of, you know, other things,
and a lot of money,
and to be able to stand up,
right,
when your party organization is going in one direction and you're going in another direction, because I dare say that, you know, their party organizations probably aren't going to support Bernie Sanders, but they're in contact with the people. They know what the people want.
Right.
The people want a change.
Yes.
They don't want any more billionaire presidents, millionaire presidents. They don't want any policies that are going to benefit the billionaires and millionaires. They want a government that serves all of us and not just some of us.
Right. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hope that the goodness out of this whole process finally shines heavily.
There's one thing I'm trying to search for this. I'm trying to find this before I go back to. I'm not sure if this is it here, but somebody asked the question to me, and I'm going to address that in a minute. And it's about the movie Harriet Tubman. And somebody questioned and say, well, Fatine, did you go see it, or how did you go see it? There's a boycott. I know there's a boycott out there. The boycott that they have out there, to me, you know, I have to be very careful when I say this. I have my opinion, and I just don't think the things that has been fought about. There's a lot of people that are radio revolutionaries and revolutionaries, yeah, or now online cyber revolutionaries. You talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. I know about boycott. Not to say I'm right on everything.
Right.
You know about boycott. We've been out there. We've been in the street. We paved the way. And there's a lot of folks that talk the talk, haven't been there. And you go back to when the boycott went against the Academy Awards out there, because you get tired of time after time blacks not being recognized.
Right.
Now, here's a movie, Harriet. Some people say boycott it because of there's no such thing as a black bounty hunter. I just didn't feel strong enough for the boycott to boycott Harriet. I went to see it. I'm not going to run. I don't run from anything that I stand up. If I'm wrong about something, I'm wrong. But I just didn't see for me. I wanted to see it.
Right. Was it worth it?
It was worth it. You know, I mean, I thought the movie could be a little bit better. But at the end of the day, here's a movie about Harriet Tubman, where a lot of times we wouldn't even think if there was going to be a movie made about Harriet Tubman. You know, I salute President Obama. See, that's what I'm saying. A lot of people say, well, President Obama didn't do nothing. Yes, he did. He did a lot. Maybe he could have done more, but he's done something. And what was voted through in his administration was to put Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill, to remove a slave owner.
Right.
But, he didn't do anything. So, yes, I went to see the movie. There's something that and Tamika Mallory wrote on Facebook last week, and she talked about the same thing about, you know, that there needs to be a discussion about it. Right. Now, you two didn't see Harriet, and the rest of the panel's not here, so I can save it to next week. But something that Tamika Mallory, and I just want to share a little bit, that she wrote on Facebook, that she wrote that, number one, there is no white savior in this film, period. There is not.
Wow.
There's no one, okay? Black slave catchers existed then, and they still exist today. Have so much to say about this, as she's saying. Yes, there were black slave catchers out there. There were black bounty hunters out there. You know, the Lone Ranger is, what I'm hearing, is after a black man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, exactly.
A ranger named Bass.
Exactly. Let me just finish this here, and number three, several black men played very positive and significant roles in Harriet's life, as well as the journey to free enslaved folks. 4, this movie is about liberation. It's not about slavery per se. Right. Per se, you understand that, yes, it's taking place during slavery, but it shows a person, especially a black woman,
standing up,
standing up and fighting for what she believed in, but not only reaching freedom for herself and being selfish, she went back.
Right.
Yes, do I have an opinion? I would have loved to see an African-American woman play this, because we as people of color have, at the end of the day, been through so much, and who can tell our story but better than we can tell our story? So I do understand that, but was that strong enough for me to boycott? And for me, I just don't think so. And like I said, this movie was about Black Moses, as she was called. So, you know about boycott, and what we fought about. You talking about this film is done by African Americans that have from the director, the writer, the cast behind. What more do you want? I know it wasn't perfect, but was it enough to boycott? Your thoughts, gentlemen?
At least I think the film has received moderate and positive reviews.
Positive reviews, and it's done well in the box office.
Yes.
Very well in the box office.
And I think to the extent that it can offer an education to consumers, especially African American moviegoers, and maybe instill in them to continue, to be to stand up correctly and to fight racism wherever they see it. I think it's a good movie.
Larry, before you go, thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. But I just want to say one thing I forgot. I went to see the movie Tuesday night, but last Sunday when I left here, I went online. I have an extensive library, but I don't have a book specifically in my library at home on Harriet Tubman. I purchased a book. I'm reading about Harriet Tubman's life because I don't leave it to a movie just to tell me about her life, and I may not even leave it to one book. But that's what I'm saying. What can motivate that's coming out of seeing this movie is that you can take this back home.
Right.
You can start a book club. You can have your young children and kids in the neighborhood to go see this movie and then have conversation about it. I just see more positive coming out of it than boycotting. Your thoughts, Larry?
I agree.
Well, the first thing I want to say, if people want to delve further into the life of Harriet Tubman, there's a young woman, and maybe you might bring her on the show, Annette Alston, who just wrote a book, just published a book on Harriet Tubman.
Okay.
Annette Alston, she's from Newark, New Jersey.
Yep.
She was at
Good
the
sister.
African American Museum, had a book signing at the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. So I would urge people to read the book Harriet Tubman by Annette Alston.
I believe we had her on the show for Team about a year ago. So.
So on the film, I have not seen the film yet. I'm debating as to whether or not I want to go see the film. There is a problem when you make films about historical personalities, particularly historical personalities that have a well-documented history, and compounded by the fact when people have a popular narrative in their mind about that historical personality.
Right.
And the event too, right?
Right. And I think what has happened, because people do have some knowledge of Harriet Tubman, and there's a lot out there on the life of Harriet Tubman, not just in literature, but there are films about the life of Harriet Tubman. So when you see a story where the directors, producers took some poetic license and added some things that may not be in the popular narrative, or that may be true and not in the popular narrative,
Right.
or they took license and included some things that were not in the life of Harriet Tubman at all.
I got that.
That's when you're asking for it,
Yeah.
And remember, Spike Lee had some problems, didn't
With
he?
Malcolm X.
Yes, because
from the nation.
he used poetic license,
Right.
To enhance, embellish some things, play down some other things,
Which Hollywood does.
right, which Hollywood does. So it is a problem.
Not to say it's right.
Right.
Not
It
to
is
say
a
it's
problem.
right.
My hope is that whether people saw the film or didn't see the film, that they will go and actually get some works about the life of Harriet Tubman
Right.
and read up. More importantly, we should be demanding who torpedoed the effort to put Harriet Tubman's face on a $20 bill.
Right.
Mnuchin, Trump's Secretary of the Treasury. So we should take up the campaign. We shouldn't let it die because Trump
Is
says,
in office, right.
it didn't want it to
Right,
happen.
right.
We should keep fighting to put Harriet Tubman's face on the $20 bill. And something else happened recently to me personally about Harriet Tubman that also relates to something in the news right now, and that's Facebook. Facebook is in the news because Zuckerberg has had to go to testify
In
before
Washington.
Congress.
That's correct.
Because people in Congress and outside of Congress feel that Facebook is engaging in monopolistic, anti-competitive practices.
That's why Reverend Sharpton and other civil rights leaders last week went out to the West Coast to meet with Zuckerberg.
That's right. Now, why do I raise that with Harriet Tubman? Because yesterday, someone posted a picture of a new statue, a beautiful statue of Harriet Tubman. I forgot where this statue is going up, but it's really a nice statue. It's Harriet Tubman, and she's in a going forward pose. She's dressed like she would have been dressed on the Underground Railroad.
Correct.
And she has a little boy in tow, which symbolizes freedom, right? The struggle for freedom. A beautiful statue. Guess what happened? Facebook, I posted the statue. It's just a statue. There was no political commentary. It just says a news piece. It was a news story saying that this statue was going up. Facebook blocked my post on the statue of Harriet Tubman. Facebook blocked a post of one of my Facebook friends reposting this very show. So what is going on with Facebook that regular black stuff? This wasn't something where, someone says something about white people, being this, that, the other, and they got blocked. This was a statue of Harriet Tubman. An episode of OpenLine Online was blocked by Facebook.
And didn't give no reason.
This is the reason that they give. It doesn't meet our community standards.
Their community standards.
So what's going on with Facebook that we can't post a picture of a statue?
What gives them the authority to do that?
Who is formulating the computer algorithms? Because a lot of this blocking is initially done by computers with artificial intelligence. It's only
it flags.
It's only in human hands when you say you click that button, you say you want this reviewed. You don't agree with this decision and you want it reviewed. What is going on with the algorithms of Facebook that conventional stuff that refer to African Americans and stuff that we stand for? Our picture when we marched for Black History, for the Amistad Act. We had a march last month, calling on all school districts to implement the Amistad Black History Law. Facebook blocked it.
Yeah. And you raised something that we need to talk about at length. And we need to do some research on this. And the reason why, because I was contacted by a gentleman, a black gentleman, that used to work for NASA. And he contacted me, and we were talking, and he brought up this to me, that he posted a picture of two African-American women with a sign. Basically, it was not dogging anyone. It was promoting blackness. Facebook blocked him. Blocked that picture for him. He said that it blocked him, but it allowed somebody else that posted that picture for it to go through. So you're right. We need to find out more about this. We need to talk. As a matter of fact, I believe next week, Mark Morial is a guest host on OpenLine, and I believe he was in that meeting with Reverend Sharpton at Zuckerberg, and they started the dialogue with him. If they didn't bring this up, then they need to bring it up. Since there's a dialogue. Because these are why the things at the end of the day, when our civil rights leaders and organizations are going out there, they have to have those platforms to bring this information back to them. Like right now, this Comcast, this whole bill, this situation with Byron out there with Comcast, that this whole thing with the bill, first it started off where he had named Reverend Sharpton and the NAACP as part of this libel suit. Now that Reverend Sharpton nor the NAACP is part of that suit no more. And now the NAACP and Reverend Sharpton said the other day on his national radio show that they're part of, and you would know this, and I'm gonna probably say it wrong. You correct me, Bob Pickett. Amicus brief.
Amicus, my friend of the court.
Yeah, amicus brief. Both of them are. Yes.
Amicus.
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 Brief.
Amicus curiae.
Right. So that's interesting, and that's something that we and our listeners has brought this up, that we need to talk more about this, because this is serious, what we are going against, and that's why these platforms are so important for us to talk about this.
Let me ask you this question: did you communicate with the group that blocked you?
They didn't block me. They didn't block me. Larry said they blocked
Facebook. Blocked me.
Okay.
Right.
Have you communicated with them?
Yeah, well, I communicated with them in the normal way that Facebook gives you the opportunity to do that. When you get a flag, you get in your notifications, you'll get a flag that says, we blocked your post because it does not meet community standards. Then you click a button that says continue, and it says if you would like this, gives you some options, and one of the options is you would like this reviewed.
This is on their Facebook page.
Yes,
okay, not
yes.
your page.
No.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
the post that was blocked was from my page, and what I'm saying is that
but you posted it on Facebook as a reference.
That's right.
Okay, I see.
Right.
Okay.
Now let me try to.
I was just trying to understand how they did it. Okay, but
Right.
I got it now.
Right.
Now let me just read a couple of things here. Y Jackson 59. I say we should all post that picture of Miss Tubman's statue on Facebook. Shame on Facebook. That's a good point right there. Charles CA, Facebook is telling you and we are not part of their community. The Amistad curriculum and New York Times 1619 project should go together. Facebook is fancy style incorporate. Facebook is extremely right-leaning. Anything that is deemed too progressive or too black will be flagged, then blocked. The question is who is doing the reviewing, as you just brought up.
That's right.
So I try to get as many folks in here today, because I know we had a smaller staff here. When we start talking about reparations for foundational black Americans, they put up the movie Harriet. Interesting. Always spoon feeding us something here, you know. I wanted to get to a couple of things. Edward Lasson, it's more about the boycott of Comcast and what they want to do with civil rights in its essence in the Supreme Court right now instead of this movie. I was trying to get some comments on the Harriet. Carlitos Harriet Tubman made $12 million. The production budget was $17 million. Advertising was $15 million. $32 million invested and got $12 million back. The $12 million back was the first weekend.
Right.
So, then the movie is still out. Bebe R. Rodriguez, how despicable that a fictional character, aka black man, was a bounty hunter to appease. I don't know. You got W. Movie seers, a disgusting display of history revisionism.
Right. Right.
You know.
This is a problem.
Cynthia Shields. My only issue is the actress Cynthia Erivo. Shades African American and gets to play Harriet Tubman. Cicely Tyson is Harriet Tubman. Yeah, Cicely's been there for a long time. Please Pickett from Pat Johnson, African American history education in every classroom, in which last week we talked about how this school basically voted against African American history being taught in their school.
Right.
So again, you got to take charge of your education. See, I didn't leave to my daughter's school, the elementary school. They read books that was that they had to read on their list. But I took them to the bookstores. I didn't go pick their books. They went with me to the bookstores.
Right.
I went to the bookstores because I wanted to support our black authors.
Right.
I could have easily went to the libraries, but I wanted to support
Right.
our African American authors. So I took my daughters to bookstores, and now you can't even find bookstores hardly. Right. Once in a while, you'll pop up with a Barnes and Noble,
Right.
But you can't find bookstores. But I took my daughters, and we read, and I see some of my friends out there taking their children on library runs. I encourage that. that.
Right.
I encourage that because we sit our children in front of that television too much, and we don't program what our children should have. We allow other people to program. And we're the only group of people that trust our children in the hands of those that don't have the best interest for our children. And that's something.
I agree. But
Gentlemen, I know there's an event that's taking place. Larry, I want to give you a chance to give out that information of the event with our good brother, Professor Cornel West.
Yes. On Saturday, on Saturday, November 23rd, the People's Organization for Progress, the Rutgers Newark College Democrats, the SGA Student Government Association of Rutgers University are co-sponsoring a forum entitled Our Role in the Revolution, the Struggle for Racial, Social, and Economic Justice. And the guest speaker will be Dr. Cornel West, and that is going to be on Saturday, November 23rd. The doors will open at 12 o'clock noon. It's going to take place at the Rutgers Golden Dome Athletic Center, which is 42 Warren Street in Newark, New Jersey. The event is free, so we're inviting everyone in our viewing and listening audience to come out. However, although the event is free, you do have to get the free tickets in advance, and you can do that either by going to Facebook, and if you just put in Cornel West in Newark, New Jersey, the invite page will pop up. You go on the invite page and get tickets through that, or you can go directly on Eventbrite and you put in the search Cornel West, Newark, New Jersey. The program pops up, and get your free tickets, because you may not be able to get in if you don't have the free tickets. So everyone come out for this very important program.
Right. And last week on the on-air open line, we had a gentleman on by the name of Roderick Reed. He is the brother of a brother. His brother's name is Rodney Reed, and Rodney Reed is on death row. He is sentenced. He has been sentenced to death, and that date is November 20th. We're coming up on this date, and what folks are saying out there is that Rodney Reed did not commit the murder of the individual that they said he did. There's evidence that was not allowed into the official trial.
Right.
So many people have jumped on board. I first saw it. I came about in two ways. I first the attorney for Reverend Sharpton's organization, Michael Hardy, had sent over some information to be reviewed, and then I saw Dr. Phil did 2 hours on this story, and then Reverend Sharpton first did the show in late October with Roderick Reed, the brother, and then of course last week we spoke on OpenLine on air, and since then other folks have joined: Oprah Winfrey, Gayle King, the music artist, Rihanna, Beyonce, LL Cool J, Kim Kardashian. And you know Kim Kardashian, you can say what you want to say, is that she deals with cases of those that have issues that have either been sentenced too long or deserve a new trial or deserve to be freed. And the reason why I brought this case here is that I want our listening audience to know more about this. Please, for more information, you can go to Facebook and put in Reed Justice Initiative. That's Reed Justice Initiative. And you also can go to the innocentproject.org. innocentproject.org. I want to thank our technical engineer, Brother Tasso, for putting this information, taking it off the rundown and putting it up on the screen. This is so important because we don't want an innocent brother to die and then for it to come back. Well, the new evidence says that he didn't commit this. It's too late. An innocent life has been taken.
Right. He's scheduled for execution, I believe, on November 20th.
November 20th is his scheduled date to be executed.
So if you don't want to see this brother executed, go to the website, show your support, sign the petition, do anything you can possibly do to prevent this. I want to give a shout out because I found out through Sean King.
The journalist.
Right, the journalist.
And activist, I'm sorry.
Activist and journalist and activist.
Civil rights activist.
And he's, I saw one of his posts, I think on Instagram is where I first saw it. And I also saw stuff he was posting on Twitter. And that's how I found out about it. So I give him a shout out. But we all should go and sign the petition, make calls to our legislators. If you look up Sean King, he has posts that list the numbers, the telephone numbers of the appropriate people, Attorney General and others that you can call. This is Texas, right, where he's being executed.
Bob, it's on your rundown. It's on your rundown.
A lot of stuff is coming out of Texas, man.
Yes.
Amber Geyer.
That's right.
Botham Jean.
That's right.
And now this Rodney Reed.
Don't forget Atiana
Jefferson. We might have to have a long march to Texas.
That's right. I also, as we get ready to end, me and Bob Pickett got into a heated debate some years back behind the scenes. And we were talking about, because I believe I supported our black authors. And you would see up and down, especially in Harlem and certain African-American communities, downtown Brooklyn, where brothers and sisters was on the street selling books. And I purchased them. I supported them, and I purchased books. So I purchased the books that are in the libraries, but I also purchased some of the books that talked about the street life. And me and Bob Pickett got into discussion about this street life book being literature.
You was reading Iceberg Slim?
Iceberg Slim, Donald Goines, baby. I read everything.
Howard Street.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. So my thing is I'm going to hold this book up because I'm taking a quote out of this book. And this quote I came across last night because I'm reading this book. And it's called Black Scarface. And this is a novel by Jimmy DeSaint and Freeway Rick Ross. And that is the book right there. And he's going to grab that book. He's going to zoom in real quick. And you can see that book because I ended the on-air show this morning with this quote, and I'm going to end this program with the same quote. And it was a quote that it made me think. I said, interesting. And this quote is here. The greatest tragedy in life is not death, but rather living without a purpose. Wow. Without a purpose, life has no meaning, no significance, no hope. It's activity without direction, events without reason, pointless. And most of all, life becomes motion without any true meaning.
Wow, that's deep.
That's why, Bob Pickett, I supported our brothers and sisters, because they make you think at times. And if we didn't have a door for them to have their literature, and I remember trying to put together, and we still put a platform of brothers and sisters out there that write books out there that makes a difference. Some of these books have become television series out there.
Right.
You know, so I support our brothers and sisters.
It's very important that we support black authors. I had mentioned Annette Alston's book on Harriet Tubman. We have another brother in the People's Organization Progress, Dr. Todd Stephen Burroughs, who just wrote a book on Ida B. Wells.
Right.
Ida B. Wells, who was one of the key figures in our struggle in the late 19th and early part of the 20th centuries, you know, and, you know, it's important that we patronize them. When I say patronize and celebrate them, but buy their books. You know, the Kwanzaa is coming up, Christmas is coming up, the King holiday is coming up. This is a time to buy gifts that are going to educate, edify, and raise up our consciousness and
celebrate.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to ask them to zoom in on this, but this is my Kindle. on my phone.
Right.
And on here, you can see Harriet Tubman is in the middle. I didn't lie.
Right.
I didn't lie.
Yes.
This Harriet Tubman. And I also purchased the book, From Superman to Man by J.A. Rogers.
J.A. Rogers.
See, you have to read
Yes.
to learn. And that's why I said, because if you don't learn something today, you was dead that day.
I'm old enough to remember in my house when I'm 65, when I was 4 years old on Ridgewood Avenue in Newark, Little Black Sambo.
Yeah, wow.
You know, how many people could say they actually had that book?
I didn't have the
in
book, but
their
I
house.
learned about that book.
Little Black Sambo. Today,
You guys are ancient. That's
right,
why.
that's right. Ancient of days.
Yeah, you're ancient. That's all right. You become elders. That's what happens.
But today, our children don't have to suffer that. There are so many black children's books. I have a friend. Her name is Dr. Rosalind Carmichael. She's a retired teacher. She taught all of her career at Malcolm X Shabazz High School in Newark, New Jersey. She's now formerly known as Southside, but it's been Malcolm X now for almost a half a century, for 48 years. And she has her doctoral degree, which she got under Dr. Molefe Asante out of Temple, in black children's literature.
Wow.
That's how many books, that's how wide the span is of the volume of black children's literature, that there could be so much that you could actually become an expert in black children's literature. I urge our listeners, when you give gifts this Kwanzaa season, this Christmas season, a Ramadan, whatever it is you celebrate, give the gift of a book that's going to edify, educate, and inspire our young people.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What we can do is to provide a listing of where books can be, African-American focused books can be obtained.
Yeah, they can be obtained. You know, that's interesting you say that. I'm not going to knock you on that, but it's hard to, and maybe we'll do the research, because there's not many bookstores out there that you can go to. And when you go to Barnes & Noble, they've gotten rid of a lot of these bookstores that are left. The black section. There used to be a black section that you can go to. Now you have to know the author's name. Sometimes you know the name of the book. But see, that's why I say, I'm not supporting Amazon.com.
Let's you and I work on, with Larry, the three of us work on putting together, compiling a listing of where our listening audience can obtain African American books.
And folks can also send in
with that.
Yeah, but like I said, a lot of people can get books online now, and see that's the thing.
Just Google.
Yeah, just Google it. Because that's how I got books online. I mean, a lot of people still want the feel of a book. Then yes, but a lot of bookstores have closed down. They don't know how to get these books.
Maybe we can recommend books too,
right?
As
we can
well.
Recommend them.
Yeah, but anyway, I got to get ready to end this show here, guys. All right, so I want to thank you all out there for participating on today's OpenLine Online, a short roundtable panel of us, and I am so glad that we went on. We had like I said, some folks got sick. Guests canceled. We had 2 guests that canceled today.
Wow.
But you know what? You just have to roll with the punches, and that's what we did today.
And ladies and
thank you
gentlemen,
for your support.
We'll see.
And I try to read things that you support us in, and even if you disagree with us, I put that out because it's about truth. It is about having a platform that we bring honesty out there for you. So again, we thank you for being here.
Yes.
And but go ahead, Bob Pickett. Go ahead and close it out.
And we'll see you, ladies and gentlemen, next week as we talk about issues that are important to you. And now, develop a scenario where we can provide you with information regarding African American authors and books.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Take care, everybody. God bless. Peace.
That was a good show, man.